What would change in the world if you, me, and everyone choose to feed the wolf of possibilities instead of the one of doubt, distrust, and despair? The way I see it, our point of view creates reality, not the other way around. Somewhere deep within, I think we know that. In this podcast, I am daring you to claim this remarkable superpower. Join us and be inspired by trackers, explorers, and finders of possibilities from the multiverse of hope. Welcome to the podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities, with your host, Katarina Wallentin.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities podcast. And today, my guest is Shannon O'Hara. She is an author and a fearless leader and explorer of awareness. She's been an Access Consciousness facilitator for nearly 20 years, and she spends most of her time facilitating Access classes all over the world. She's raised in Santa Barbara, California, by Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, and she now lives in Malmö, Sweden, or has it as her base for her adventures. So, Shannon, welcome.
Yay! Hello.
Hi, and we will dive into the elusive possibilities of living a life in ease, joy, and glory. And a while ago, I heard you say that your main ask is for everything to be eased or come to you with ease. Could you talk a little bit more about that? How did that become your ask, and how has it changed your life?
Well, I've always been a huge questioner of life. You know, I was such a deeply philosophical teenager. It was always like, what's the point of being alive? Why are we here? Why do I have a body? Like, what is life? Who am I? I was like, I don't know if that's like normal thinking for teenagers, but that was definitely my, where I was at as a teenager. And so I've always been a big seeker and a huge questioner of everything. And so as I was a young adult, there was a huge move towards like, what do I want to do? And I was having this conversation with my father in a class many, many years ago. And I was just like, I don't even know what my priorities are. Like, I don't really get what my target, like, it wasn't like I didn't know. It was sort of like anything was possible. Now, what can I choose? And it was this big, overwhelming blank. And he says, well, and he said to me, what if you prioritized ease? And I was like, wow, that can be the whole target of my life, like ease. And I thought, whoa, okay, I hadn't even considered that. And so I really put it to the test. And for like the next 3 to 6 months after that conversation, I predicated all my choices upon ease. And it sounded something a little bit like this. What choice will create the greatest ease? What choice will create the greatest ease? What choice will create the greatest ease? And it blew my mind. Which choice that I didn't even expect would create the greatest ease created the greatest ease. And I always went towards what would create the greatest ease. And it's that way of choosing that cultivates the priority you're fertilizing. And so ease, I think a lot of people I think like me, don't even realize that ease is like a valid life quest. It sort of maybe seems frivolous or unachievable or silly or not valuable, but it's this whole other way of living. Can I add something on here too? Recently, because I don't know if the questions will lead to this, sort of had this whole new level of ease open up to me into my awareness, which is as like a mandatory 14-day hotel quarantine when you land there. And I have a lot of my life is involved with Australia. My husband's Australian, my stepchildren are Australian, and my husband is now doing his second hotel quarantine by himself. And I was supposed to go this time, and I totally just chickened out at the end. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Now I've made a plan to go. But I was with my dad over Christmas, and I was saying to him, I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm totally worried about hotel quarantine because when you get to Australia, you get no choice of where you get to lodge. You have no, you can't request anything. You can't pay for an upgrade, nothing. They put you on a bus and they drop you off where they drop you off, and you just have to be there for 14 days. You can't go outside, no fresh air, nothing. So I was like, I don't think I can do this. And my dad said, well, what if all of life just comes to you with ease and joy and glory? And I realized that I had so many conditions and expectations about what ease should look like that I really wasn't functioning from ease, joy, and glory. I was functioning sort of 50% from ease, 50% from projection and expectation. That just gave me a whole new level of awareness of that. If ease is the priority, if ease is the possibility that you're seeking, how many decisions, projections, judgments do you have about what is ease?
No, exactly. And let's actually back up a little bit, because the mantra of access consciousness that we both work with is all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I remember the first time I heard that, it kind of pissed me off. I'm like, that is bullshit. Most of life does not come to you with ease and joy and glory. And so even the whole idea with the mantra, once I started to look, get a little further in, is that all of life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the intense, the uncomfortable, the wonderful, all of it comes to you with ease and joy and glory. And somehow what I got from you saying that your main ask was ease is that you actively choose your life based in that ease is your target. So if we even go further back, so what is ease for you?
That is a great question. I don't know. I wonder if there's ease for me, or if like ease is just like one of those things that exists like the oxygen, that it just is. Everybody breathes it. Everybody has access to it. It's like one of those abundant resources in the world. One of the main things I realized I was doing in my quest for ease was, I had so many different aha moments of recognizing that I had been avoiding ease. Like ease is always there. Actually, I do think ease is one of those abundant elements. And it's the choices that we make and the sort of points of view and positions we take that give us greater access to the ease or less access to the ease. And so I recognized in many different ways, just like the story I just told, what ease should look like, realization about my misunderstanding of ease, but also that I had been having ease, but distracting myself from it and telling myself all these stories and creating all these problems, which I fundamentally was doing because I subconsciously believed that difficulty, trauma, drama, effort was somehow more real.
Exactly. So then if you look at the whole, all of life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory. And joy and glory are nearly even more elusive somehow. So what would you say, what is joy and glory? What is it?
I believe that ease, joy, and glory are actually resources and elements of consciousness. Just like oxygen, they're available. And so many of us breathe oxygen, but don't really realize, like, we're not sitting there thinking like, I'm breathing oxygen. Thank you, universe, for the oxygen. Wow, look at what this oxygen is providing. Like, we just breathe. We're just sort of like, whether we are entitled to it or not, we breathe. Like, it's just sort of like, we can have it. And that's part of living on this planet with a body. And ease, joy, and glory are equally as abundant resources, if maybe not more abundant, that are vital to sustain life. And if you look around at the world, there's so many people not inhaling ease, joy, and glory. They're refusing ease, joy, and glory, and in so doing, eroding their quality of living.
With them being elements of consciousness that are always available. So then this part of choosing them, which is what living a life based on choosing for ease, or a life based on choosing for joy or glory, would allow you to actually access those elements. So how would you say that you have, I guess, trained yourself to start choosing more for that?
Yeah. And it's just what I was saying earlier about asking, like, literally with every choice, I would ask, what's going to create the greatest ease? Like, and so that it was this huge exploration of what ease actually was. And something that I never realized that ease was like, one of the big ahas I had was that having more money, and I don't think that this is going to be like revolutionary. I think most people probably realize this. Having more money would facilitate greater ease, but it was the willingness to spend the money that I had to really change in my own world, because somewhere I had like geared towards like thrifty or don't spend, like not spending was correct. But I'd ask what's going to create more ease. And it's like, definitely it's buying that, $10,000 first class ticket. And it was sort of like, I was like, can my life be that easy? It was a huge confront for me to have that kind of ease, and to also recognize that I had to be willing to have more money, more ease. I had to be willing. It wasn't this like, I deserve it. It's not like it's right for me to have more ease and money. It was just like, I have to be willing to have this kind of life.
Well, so what came up when you were talking about that is that it seems nearly like we would avoid, because we want to be right and we want to be good people. So if we look at the kingdom of we, which would include everyone.
So this is actually a good thing to emphasize, is like right and good exist, but are they natural, or are they judgments and points of view? And are you abundant in rightness and goodness? Or you can't actually be abundant in rightness and goodness and abundant in ease, joy, and glory. Like they cancel each other out.
Yep. Would you kind of explore a little bit that all of life comes to us with ease and joy and glory, and how that actually can create the kingdom of we, where everybody's included, and not go to the kingdom of me, which it would seem like at a first glance that all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, not to us, but it comes to me. I'm going to keep it there, like Gollum. What is it that actually it seems to me that it would have to do with that it is elements of consciousness, and they're available for everyone, therefore it's part of the kingdom of we. But would you explore that a bit?
Yeah, I could go in like 15 different directions with that question. Let me do this one that popped up as the first thing, or maybe actually it was the third thing that I thought of when you asked. I just flew from Houston, Texas to Europe, and I got to the airport, and the poor guy behind the counter, like with all of these new COVID restrictions, these people working at the airlines have to constantly read like huge amounts of text to understand like how to check people in depending on the country they're going into and stuff. And so I get there and they're like, do you have a COVID test? And I was like, oops, no. Like I didn't even bother to check that I needed to have a COVID test to fly into Denmark, which was where my ticket was. And he said, do you have a COVID test? And I was like, no, of course not. Like, I thought it was like the silliest question. Like, no, of course not, and then he proceeded for like the next 25 minutes to like figure out how to make this work. And I was just standing there just being like, well, my life is ease. So whatever direction this goes, like, I'm fine with that. But to the right and the left of me, I had people freaking out and being angry at the travel people behind the desk, and just like having all these issues. And since all of life was coming to me with ease and joy and glory, and if I had to cancel my trip and he's like, we'll give you a full refund. Like I was like, okay. And I was like, or should I go to Australia, or do I change my I was just like, whatever direction this needs to go, I'm gonna let that be easy for me. And in my willingness to sort of be relaxed, have space, not freak out about the moment, it made this guy's whole world a lot easier. And he was able to work through and actually help me achieve what I needed to achieve really easily. And so that's like one example of how when all of life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory, it can also affect others.
In addition, it also ties into this where your point of view creates your reality. Your point of view was that my life is ease. Therefore, the reality for you and everyone around you will be ease. Like you're infecting and affecting everyone around you with your point of view.
Yeah. I mean, I think to add on to the kingdom of we question, I don't actually, also on another note about that, I'm not sure that the kingdom of we and all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory are necessarily synonymous to one another. I think that on the grand scale of ease, joy, and glory, it is an inclusion of everything, like all of life. So that means you're receiving a lot. And if you were truly receiving, there is no me. It is ultimately the kingdom of oneness, which is, I think can be a little too conceptual for people, but yeah, that's the ultimate possibility.
And that's beautiful. That's probably what I was after this, really looking at the all of life, and all of life includes everything. And that would ultimately also, like when you were there at the airport, how all of life really includes everyone you interact with and everyone you come across in your life, and you will thereby receive and gift with them continuously. So what about the glory part? Could you talk a little bit about that? That always confuses people as well.
Glory, I feel like, is a really old-fashioned English word, but I believe that it, in its original definition, means the exuberant expression and abundance of life, which is, I think, is also hysterical, because if you look around at a lot of people, it's like, is their life an exuberant expression, or is their life sort of like this painful deterioration? Not to be critical. That's not a criticism. That's just like an observation. There's not a lot of really happy, exuberant people that have this abundance of living, whatever that is, whatever that looks like for each person.
And how does it look like for you?
Well, since you asked, I had this interesting moment this morning. I have a very unconventional life. I live multinationally. I have a multinational business. I work with people all around the world. I'm rarely in one place for very long. The way I make money is unconventional. The way my whole life shows up is just like completely, you could not understand it for love nor money on paper. Like, forget about it. The taxation agencies are like, what? Who are you? What are you doing? Like, no one understands. And that's because I have a lot of movement in my life. Like you said in the beginning, I'm based in Malmö, Sweden, but I'm, all over the world, really. I have multiple citizenships. I'm very global. And in that, there has to be some planning. Like, you have to really pay attention, especially now with what's going on with COVID, because like traveling is a lot more restricted, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been actually stressing out a little bit about what my life plan is, because I hold a British passport, and January 1st, Brexit's going to go through, and I will no longer have freedom of movement in the EU like I have had. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting, because we have a residence in the EU, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been a little bit stressed out, but I had this massive awareness this morning that I'm not really being present. Like, I'm constantly looking to, what do I need to be aware of in the future? What do I need to like do now to like deal with this potential possibility that could be a potential restriction, but usually never ends up being a restriction? Like, every step I've ever taken has always opened up to greater for me, even if I couldn't see it at the time. And so this is now a time more than ever for me that I really need to be in all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, because whatever this path forward is for me, I can't predict, because I don't have a predictable life. I sort of deliberately took away predictability from my equation of my living. So I don't have a predictability. I don't have like a fallback position. I have to question forward. And I realized I wasn't actually being present and like enjoying my life in the moment. So I was standing there drinking my cup of coffee, and I was like, wow, I need to be living my life, not constantly in the projection of what's coming. Yeah.
I think that's really brilliant in the way that it basically, in that way, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, allows you to be in the undefined and the unpredictable. And I would say for so many people, 2021 is probably the most undefined, unpredictable, and unplanned year they've had in ages. And it's kind of like, when you used to be a kid, and when you were a kid, like a smaller kid, the year was so long, there was like no way. You had no idea what was going to happen. And that was part of the fun, that you didn't know. Like, you didn't but we've come to become used to like having most of our year planned out. We know where to go and what's going to happen. And now here we are, and it's like a brand new era where this year actually is not pre-planned or pre-figured out. Or in this, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. If we were willing to actually be that, that would allow us then to live.
There's an addition onto that. All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, which like is, I think, why ease, joy, and glory is so like least chosen in favor of like control and expectation. Because if all of life comes to you with ease and joy and glory, you really have to be in the question, because sometimes you don't really know, you won't know how the ease can show up. That's one of the things about the universe. Like it oftentimes has a far greater reach and larger perspective than you do, because we tend to expect what we know or what we've seen and already believed. But what if the universe can give us ease in a way that like we've never imagined, like literally never imagined? This has happened to me like a bazillion times, where stuff shows up in ways that I'm like, wow, I never could have imagined that that's how this could have showed up. And if you'll be in all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, it is such this commitment to trusting that the universe has your back. Ooh, wow. And that, you can't control it. And if you try to control it, you might be excluding the ease rather than including the ease.
That is so true. Because as soon as you try to control it or you are actually taking yourself out of the trust that this is the base of all of this is the trust. And the fact that this, what you're saying with the universe has a much bigger, bigger perspective, the time, like all the things that actually is included in the universe is so much bigger. And again, that also makes this all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory so much bigger than the goal on me. I'm going to keep it. This is mine. It's not about that. It's about that totality of gifting and receiving and being willing to trust that everything comes to me with ease and joy and glory.
And that's something that I love about the title of this podcast that you're creating, The Wolf of Possibility. I believe you got this wolf concept from the Tomorrowland movies. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it is I think it's like an old native Indian story from the beginning with the wolves and the wolf you feed. And yes, I got reminded of it from that movie Tomorrowland with George Clooney, and that I really enjoy the whole concept of that it is our point of view that creates our reality, our future, and our lives. And we have so much more power than we think. Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about that? I would love to talk a little bit about that based on, if nobody's seen Tomorrowland, it's such a great watch. If you haven't watched it, like go watch it and then come back and re-listen to this podcast afterwards. Because in that movie, they, in the end, am I going to do a spoiler alert? Well,
no,
have to look
go
at
ahead.
You have to look at like what's being broadcast out. And like, if you watch news at all during the last year or the last century, it's always like the worst news. Like it's just constantly this direct line of like the absolute most worst news. Like I often wonder why there isn't news of like all the amazing things that are happening. Anyways, conversation for another time. But it's been so interesting to observe over this Corona period, people's vocabulary and how they're behaving. And you and I actually had breakfast yesterday, and we were talking about, you were like, because you live in Stockholm and you're like, I'm not usually here for the winter, and this has been really new and interesting, and I'd rather not be here for a full winter. And I was like, well, why don't you go? I was like, why don't you go to Spain? Why don't you go to France? But in your world, you were like, but it's closed. And I was like, no, they're not really closed. Like you can actually go there. And what I've actually noticed is a lot of people what I've noticed is when you actually, during this Corona time, when you're actually in the location that you're in, like when I've been anywhere, I've been in Texas, I've been in New Mexico, I've been in Arizona, I've been in California, I've been in Sweden, I've been in Denmark, I've been in Mexico. I think that's it. That's like a really small travel year for me, by the way, but those are the places I've been during the Corona time. Oh, and I've been in Switzerland. When you hear news about traveling, it's totally paranoia inducing. But then when you actually do it and you're on the ground in the place, everything's fine.
And it's so correct. Like I've been in Turkey and Italy and somewhere else during this time as well, traveling. And wherever you are, it is completely different when you're there because it's the story about the problems, limitations, and restrictions that when we buy them as real and make them our point of view, that's what really stops us. Once you're there, it is easy and ease, joy and glory in whatever way that shows up right now. It is still always available. It's like you say, those elements are always available to choose wherever you are. So yes, and what's been broadcasted, if we look at this period, the COVID period, and what point of view that has created, it's like an experiment if you haven't watched the Tomorrowland movie, watch it and then look at what has been broadcasted this year and what that has created in the world and what it is still creating and what would you like to choose? Because that movie shows that in such a brilliant way. So all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory in a way is a practice that you could use during this time and really look at, would you be willing to have that be the case for you? I am definitely going to make this my year of ease, joy, and glory, or maybe, the rest of my life. But let's start with this first year and ask that question that you said in the beginning. Well, what can I choose here that would be ease, that would be joy, and that would be glory?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything, if you could end with one single thing that you could recommend in addition to that question for people just to get started with having a life and a living really in ease, joy, and glory? Anything in addition to asking that question?
Be honest with yourself. Like,
oh my God, that was just such a great thing. Okay, let's go back there. Be honest with yourself. Tell us more.
Just like it's so easy to buy into the hype of life and easy to buy into the hype of money problems or travel restrictions or some global pandemic that's like death, doom, and destruction, that it really isn't. It's like, if you're honest with yourself, you can discover what ease is. I had to be really honest with myself that I was having ease and I was massively distracting myself from it because it didn't seem like a valid choice. And that was like this complete like undercurrent of my psyche that I really had to be like discover through awareness and being brutally honest with myself that like, oh, my life is ease, and wow, am I really avoiding acknowledging that? And then, oh wow, it's like the whole cornerstone of the life that I'm living is based on that everyone else values struggle. And I know that based on what they demonstrate through their money struggles and their body struggles and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, wow, so if I'm going to have ease, I'm going to have to be willing to be totally different than everybody. And that was I had to be really honest with myself about a whole bunch of stuff. And if you're honest with yourself, you can see what is, and it's on like brutal honesty with self is, I believe, one of the strongest elements for true freedom.
And it really also, what I realized when you were talking is that without that brutal honesty with yourself, you can't really have all of life come to you in ease and joy and glory, because you have so many projections, expectations, judgments of how your life should look like, be like, show up like, that may not be true for you. That may not be what you actually even desire deep within, because you're then creating this life that should come to you in ease, joy, and glory based on everyone else and everything around you and everything that you bought as true. So that brutal honesty, it really is the cornerstone, because then you can see what would be ease for me in this situation. What would be ease? What would be joyful for me? Not what would look joyful for the rest of the world if they looked at me from the outside.
Wow.
So that
Yeah.
brutal honesty is such a key and a cornerstone to this. I'm so glad you brought that up at the very end here. So brutal honesty, the willingness to really know, what is this for me? What would I like? What would I like to choose? Who am I? Really? Beautiful. Thank you so much. If they would like to find you and find out more about what you do, where can they go?
I have a couple of websites, shannon-o'hara.com and also talktotheentities.com. I also have my own podcast that if you enjoyed this conversation with Kat, I hope you come check out the Consciousness Anywhere podcast. I would love to see more people reaching for consciousness all over the world.
It's an amazing podcast with some truly fascinating conversations in all kinds of topics. So go there. They can find it on your website, correct? So they can go there.
You can find it on the
website.
website. You can find it on my shannon-o'hara.com website, and you can also just locate it on whatever podcast platform you use. Just search for Consciousness Anywhere.
And I think that we will end the conversation there for today. And I hope to have you on again and explore some more possibilities. Thank you so much,
Katarina.
Shannon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities. I hope you have more space in your world now. If you would like to listen to earlier episodes, share with other people, or subscribe, please go to Spotify, iTunes, or visit katarinawallentin.com/wolf.